There is. Okay.
Yeah.
It's saying waiting still.
7 people already liked it. We haven't even started.
And it says we are live. So hello, everybody. Welcome to a YouTube special of Behind the Life podcast. It's part 2 on Behind the Life of the Madeleine McCann case. I'm joined today by 2 very special guests. Firstly, Isabelle McFadden, who was
Hello.
on the first part. Hi, Isabelle. How are you?
Good. A little hot in California tonight, but nice.
And I am also joined by Roberta Glass, who hosts True Crime Report podcast over in New York. Hey, Roberta, how are you?
Very well, thanks.
Everybody out there who's listening, if you have any questions or comments, please be kind, no swearing, and drop them in the comments box, and we'll try to answer as many as possible. On the first episode that we put out a few weeks ago, it was a massive success, and we covered areas such as Jane Tanner, the Tapas 9, negligence, and the Cadaver dogs. On this episode, we've got so much to go over. And firstly, I want to go into more detail about latest update news on Christian Brueckner, it's in the news every day. I'll pass over to you first, Isabelle, on Christian Brueckner. For those who listen who have not seen the news, exactly who is he, and how close is he to being potentially charged?
Okay, so I will go into it a little bit from my latest that I've had from a journalist that I follow in Portugal. Her name is Felicia Cabrita. And so I think I have mentioned before that I myself spoke to Judiciária. What she got was very similar to what I got. The comment that I have from her was that the Judiciary Police continues to investigate Christian Brueckner, but then she goes into, but the Portuguese police tells us, I'm obviously translating from Portuguese, that everything that the German authorities have collected is still not enough to exclude other lines of investigation and other suspects. In fact, within the PJ, it is a given that what exists up to now is insufficient to deduct any accusation of Christian Brueckner. And this is the most recent. The information that we're getting from Portugal, from Sexta às Nove, a program with a Portuguese journalist, it's just an opinion program. It's not news. She's putting forward her opinion and what she has found. And there's a lot of stories that she's relying on that's coming from British media, actually not connections with the Portuguese PJ, which is always what I try to get. What is the PJ saying? What is Scotland Yard directly saying? Not what the media is saying, because what the media is saying is, as we know all these years, it's always been just a bunch of stories. So what we have here is that Felicia Cabrita was told that they have other suspects that they're looking at. And whatever is coming from Christian Brueckner, this investigation, they cannot stop looking at the real suspects they believe they have. That's what I deduct from this. And that there's really nothing sufficient still to accuse Christian Brueckner, and the Wales that they're looking at. This was already done 3 weeks ago. So people thinking that this just happened, the other day is not true, because Felicia has been talking about these searches already for 3 weeks until now, and now she's revisiting. So that's basically what I think about Brueckner.
So Christian Brueckner, he's obviously serving time over in prison in Germany at the moment. His whereabouts, yes. He was obviously in or around Pré de Luche during May 2007. It's also came out that I believe probably from his mobile ping, that he was there or thereabouts in the region. How strong a case would it possibly be that he may well have abducted Madeleine, for example?
Well, as Gonzalo Amaral said just very recently in Jornal do Centro, was like, first we would have to prove that she was abducted. And still to this day, there is no proof that she was abducted. Everything that was put forward by the McCanns, like the shutters were damaged, that was found not to be true at all. So she obviously, that window has no meaning in an abduction because the window was not disturbed at all. And then opening a window when you have two perfectly good doors to go out of seems absolutely ridiculous. And then carrying a child out the window. So, I mean, it would make sense if the window was the point of entry, but since the window was not broken into or damaged, that certainly wasn't any point of entry. So, and there's nothing that connects Christian Brueckner to this, to that apartment. And when we're talking about phone pings, it's been very well explained. He lived just within a mile of the Ocean Club. There was only one antenna in the area, and that was picking up everything from the town. And that, because it's kind of in a valley, you know, like the mountains behind it, it could even pick up further locations. So you can't pinpoint anybody to the ocean, anyone to the Ocean Club. So we know this. There's nothing that puts, I think when the police says the resort, they could be saying the resort as the town being a resort, but certainly not the Ocean Club. We can't, in 2007, pinpoint somebody to the Ocean Club. And the police in Portugal made that very clear.
And thanks, Isabel. And Roberta, what are your thoughts on everything you're reading in the media about Christian Brueckner at the moment?
Well, I think it's very interesting that it came out right after the Madeleine McCann documentary on Netflix was a huge failure. So what I look at on my podcast, one of the main things I look at is PR in these big true crime cases. Mm-hmm. And when McCann have always used PR, they got a PR representative very quickly out. Yeah. And that is understandable if you have a lost child, but the PR seemed to be about the McCanns, not so much about Madeleine, right? Yeah. A lot of it. So so first there was the Netflix documentary that really floated this idea of an abduction, but it was in my opinion, a big failure because I don't have people coming to at least my podcast and repeating the things in the podcast in the Netflix documentary, repeating the points, saying, well, it has to be an abduction because this, that, and the other, or, you know, repeating the points. So it was kind of a failure in that end. Secondly, you have the McCanns coming out saying, we want peace. Okay, we don't have a lawyer anymore. We just want peace. Okay, interesting. Then we have this Christian Brueckner story come out with what seems to be, we're all waiting to see the evidence that Christian, it seems to be just floated out there, in my opinion, to give the McCanns peace, to make a myth that he did it. Everybody, so that the people that don't know anything about the case will say, well, I thought I read in the paper that German pedophile did it. Wasn't it he who did it? Oh, that's the way the story ends. When you have to close the story, the end of the story has to have a definite ending, not everything up in the air. Oh, it was the German guy. Done. End of story. PR success. Yeah. So that's what I think we're seeing. And I'm very interested in seeing other little things come up, like on YouTube, a panel of behavior experts all agreeing that the McCanns are very reliable, very earnest, very truthful, four guys. I challenge, at least in America, to find 4 people on the street to look at one of the McCann's interviews and come to that same conclusion. Untrained laymen to look and come to that same conclusion. I challenge you. Their interviews are some of them, just the weirdest, most bizarre. You don't get the feeling of parents who've had a child abducted. Yeah. You know, they don't, everything's and you can say, oh, well, everybody reacts differently, but it's always within a spectrum. this is so off the spectrum, the
Yeah.
McCann's reaction.
Yeah.
So that's I'm very, very interested to see if this works. If this doesn't work, then
Yeah.
we may have suspect number, Isabel can
Yes.
tell you she's seen 100 of these, or I mean,
Yeah.
not 100,
And
that's an
even
exaggeration, a
in the
lot of them,
States.
right?
And Roberta, the interesting thing here, even in the States, somebody just mentioned to me, oh, I thought a German suspect was already caught last year, because if you remember well, there was another German suspect, Nay. And then somebody's like, oh, I thought they already caught somebody. I thought this case was closed, because over the years, people have heard of so many suspects. People that don't pay attention, especially Americans, a lot of people think that this case was already been solved and that they've already found, some, murderer of Madeleine McCann, just because these stories have passed so many times. One thing that automatically got me going, and I was really busy this weekend because I had guests, but all these news started to come about the searches, and I just started to laugh. The moment I heard Vila do Bispo, I was like, oh, here we go, because nothing connects Brueckner to Vila do Bispo. The only thing that connects Vila do Bispo to this case is the parents. Lizzie Taylor, she just sent me, and then Ben and I were talking about it too. They're like, think about all the visits that the McCanns, you see, from the 19th, I believe it was the 19th of July, the McCanns started to make these little trips. We have to remember that they said they didn't know anyone in Portugal, that they had no friends in Portugal, so who would have helped them? Well, from the 19th, they started to do these visits, which we then call the Triangle, which is an area of Budens, Raposeira, and Sagres, all there within the Vila do Bispo area. And Jerry McCann's phone specifically pinged in Vila do Bispo. And at the time, we've had many conversations about this, and that PJ was obviously very interested in this area. And so when all of a sudden people are like, oh, they're searching for Madeleine's body, and they're doing these searches in relation to Christian Brueckner, and I was like, oh, this is exciting. And I don't know if you're able to put out in the display, Adam, but I put together.
There we go. It's just
I put together the trip, the pings on Jerry's phone, and Kate, I believe, was the 26th, went to pick up Jerry from the airport. Now, please note that Jerry was away in the United States on a campaign. Everything was a campaign. So his daughter's missing in Europe, and he's on a campaign with some big shots here in the US. And so he comes back. You would think the first thing he'd do is go run to his children, but he doesn't. What he actually does, he bypasses a trip that should have taken about an hour. He bypasses it, and the trip takes about 3 hours. And he goes right over. Everything is a campaign. Yeah. In Europe, and he's on a campaign with some big shots here in the US. Oh, this is very odd. I just did something.
Have you got playback?
Oh, you know what? I'm just going to turn off my YouTube then. Sorry. Is it okay?
Yeah, that's fine. So, so you're saying, so Jerry McCann flew back from the States, and he, where the graphic is shown on the screen is Praia da Luz, and he drove right past Praia da Luz.
Correct. For an extra hour. And so I did a little display where you see where he bypasses it, and then he would have to go back. So why would somebody who doesn't know anybody now goes out of the way, completely out of the way, passes the location where he's living, where his children are, and is back again in Vila do Bispo? And why is the police now investigating Vila do Bispo? That I found, I just, I've been saying it from the beginning. I know that everybody talks about scapegoats, and, that there's something, some sort of a cover up. But this is so crazy that I actually believe that the German police, in conjunction with the Portuguese and Scotland Yard, have a bigger plan. They have to have a bigger plan, because Germany cannot be willingly including themselves into this thing. They themselves say they don't have enough to pin it on Christian Brueckner, but they can completely ruin this man's reputation. Okay. I mean, now people are tying him to every single rape, murder, burglary. I mean, you watch it every day now in the media. It's like he rapes old women, he rapes young women. He has women that thought he was extremely good looking and charming. He has other women that thought that he was beating. He was mean to cats. He was mean to, I mean, it's just, my God, if the man is, profilers must be just, jumping out of their skin, because that's usually not people that go after old people, are not going to, be kidnapping and sexually molesting children. It's just, it's really all over the place. And it makes Germany look so incompetent at this point to point at somebody, call them a murderer, and then back off of it, ruin his name, and then say, but we really don't even have enough to accuse him yet. But you are accusing him. So, and then you have England and Portugal completely distancing. And as you saw here from the PJ, and I personally, when I spoke to them, they said, we're looking at other lines of investigation. We are doing everything to help the Germans in what they want to look at. And, they have all the right to do that. So they've made requests to the Portuguese, but that the Portuguese are looking at other suspects, as you see here, and other lines of investigation.
So for those people that don't know, so Villa de Bispo, that is where the police are looking at the moment. Is that correct? And also, what is that? A small town? Is it a village? What is it, Isabelle?
Well, Beach was actually rather, I mean, I haven't been there in so many years, but I mean, it's a rather larger town. Villa do Bispo is not that small. The Algarve is not like Lisbon. It's just composed of, different towns, but it's a different size. But the thing about Villa do Bispo is that there's a forest there. There's like a national forest. It's actually pretty long. It goes up the coast. I remember being there as a kid. But so no, there's plenty of places. There's plenty of hiding places. And for people who have been to the Algarve, it's very extensive, and there's a lot of land, and there's a lot of abandoned mansions, farms, homes that people buy, and then the families, they don't go back for years. So, and in the old days, there were definitely wells as sources of water, so a lot of these old farmhouses would have them. So some of them are dry, some of them still have water in them, some of them are abandoned. So there's lots of options there. So I definitely believe, not only did I believe, I knew that searches were going on, but they didn't just happen. Like I remember, I just read an article said they're there today, and it's crazy. They've been doing this for 3 weeks already, and it's my journalistic sources had already mentioned that they are that they've been searching already for a good 3 weeks.
What do you make of that, Roberta, of what Isabelle's just said?
It's very interesting, and I just as Isabelle's talking, I guess I'm thinking of the audience, and I don't have any personally bad feelings towards the McCanns, but when there's no evidence of an abduction, it makes it hard to go there. There's other cases that they're not exactly similar, but there are cases where people have tried to say something happened. And there's like the Jeffrey McDonald case. Doctor who said his family was murdered when it was a muddy night. There's no evidence of anyone ever coming in. There's no footprints of anyone else. The shutters aren't, in the McCann's case, they say the shutters are broken, but they're not broken. They changed the way that they said they came in the apartment door. They also said, oh, well, we took Madeleine out we took her to the playground that night. Oh no, we didn't. She was too tired. We changed the story. So what's going on? And then also with the stories not with their friends, also not coming together. So I think all we Isabel and I want to do is find out the truth for Madeleine. It's not some kind of like that we're, out to get anyone. We just want to know what happened. And when someone is refused, like Kate McCann, refusing to answer 48 questions and refusing to cooperate, we I guess we take a little bit of offense because she's the one asking us, the public, if we know anything to help them, but she's not doing her part. They never searched. They never searched. When have you ever not searched for anything that's lost, whether it's your keys, your wallet, your cat, your dog, that was important to you, let alone a kid, So that's how I react.
Yeah.
When the public, the court is not in a vacuum. I mean, look at the Bill Cosby case. I'm sorry to bring up other cases, but I'm just trying to make a point that, that story was out there. But as 50 women came forward, that's when they chose to prosecute Andrea, and they had a year to do it, to Andrea Constant's story. That's when they prosecute, when there's public pressure. Epstein, Maxwell, same thing. These things didn't happen. I think the U.S. Would be totally happy to have let Epstein skate by with his deal he made in Florida. The public opinion has a lot to do with whether cases get tried or not. So that is why there is so much emphasis on PR. And I think it's a very dangerous, fad. What do you call it? What do you call it? Way things are going, where things are getting, right? That things are getting played in the court of public opinion instead of court. Because there's, you can say anything you want in a documentary. You can say anything you want, to a journalist, but or a podcast. But a court is very different.
The PR from the McCanns has always led this case. They were always ahead. They were always the ones feeding these suspects. Them and their fake investigation teams were always the one who were coming up with these new, if you go back in time, it was never really the police that were putting forward these, the ugly people and the people with pimples and the gypsies. It was always led by, it was almost like the McCann team was saying jump, and then the police were following behind and saying how high. And then they kept following up, all of these leads that were just silly. And I think that's why along the lines, everything has gotten so confused. Back to this triangle thing, another thing that's related to this is Kate's dream that Kate had, now and then, and this was all around the same time, these visits to Villa do Bispo. It was all in an interval where she had the dream, and then the dogs were already Mark Harrison they were already discussing these dogs coming to Portugal. The McCanns found out about it, and after the dogs came, the McCanns never visited. Their phones never pinged there again. I don't know if they turned off their phones or if they realized that now, because what happened was they were told that the investigation was changing course. And I think they thought, oh, it's changing course to us. So I don't know if then they became more careful. But, Kate, one thing that I thought was very significant was Kate, had this dream, and she calls Paiva, one of the inspectors who spoke English, and they even discussed that their children played together. So she became very close to Paiva, who speaks perfect English. And she tells him about this dream where Madeleine is laying on a hill. But then the interesting thing is, Kate never said that she was buried on a hill, nothing. Who later mentioned the dream was Jerry McCann, saying he needed to make sure that people knew that Kate never had a dream that Madeleine was buried on the hill. Well, the interesting thing is, he was the only one who discussed Madeleine buried on the hill. That was not what Kate said. So it's like, what are you telling us? What are you feeding us? Everything that has ever been incriminating has always come from the McCann's mouth. It was Kate McCann that said the kids were drugged. The drugs came from them. not from the police. As Luis Neves, now the head of the PJ, said in the court, he said, it was the McCanns that told us that Madeleine was dead. They were the ones that started to, feed us, that Madeleine was possibly dead. It wasn't, the Portuguese police were not saying anything like that. They were just investigating, all the leads that were looking fruitful, and they were taking a look at everything. But yeah, so this whole triangle thing and this and these visits, if you this all seems to me to be going right back to the McCanns. Exactly what I've always felt. And it's very, it's possible that maybe there is some crazy conspiracy. But why are we now bringing Germany into our conspiracy? And why is Germany so all over the place with this? What is it that they're trying to do? And let's not forget, I believe Amaral, when he talks about the van, that van, the Germans basically asked they put out an appeal, and this is when I called Judiciária myself, and they put out an appeal for this about a month ago. We all heard it, and that there was this German new suspect, and they wanted more information of anybody who had seen his van around Praia da Luz. Then halfway through, so at that point, I call Judiciária and I have a little link that somebody that I contact over there. And I asked them, what's going on with this? And they were very clear with me. We are working with England. We are working with Germany. Germany seems to think that they have somebody that they want us to look into. We are all sharing the same information. They have put out an appeal for information. We have not put out an appeal in Portugal, because I said, why are they putting out the appeal? If the van was in Portugal and they're asking for people who saw the van, why would people in Germany have seen the van? The van was always in Portugal with Portuguese plates. Yeah. So, and again, she says, well, we're not putting out an appeal, which already told me something is not, something is amiss here. So then just about 2 weeks ago, Gonçalo Amaral comes out, and I'm sure he's always working on the case on the side. And he comes out with a new picture of the van, of what the van looks like. And if you take a look at the van that the Germans put out, you can tell it's the same van. And in the picture from Amaral, the van has little cartoons everywhere, little doll cartoons. In the van that the Germans, and that's what that van looked like the day that it left Portugal. And this is what he was told, and this is what the sources told him. If you look at that van that the Germans put forward, you can see the license plate is the same, the details is the same. You can even see where the paint, there's little black pieces where you can still see where the dolls, these cartoon dolls, match up with those two little pieces there. So obviously, what would Germany tell us to look for a van that looks one way when that's not how that van looked like? So let's suppose now one of the Tapas 9 sees this appeal from the Germans, calls up Scotland Yard or Judiciária or BKA and says to them, oh, we saw that van. We saw that van. Oh my God, that has to be it. We saw that van. What would the Germans know now? The Germans would know that somebody in the Tapas would again be willing to lie, because they would know there's no way they saw that van, because that's not the way that van looked. So anybody that's going to come forward and say, I saw that van, unless they say, oh, I saw Brueckner's van, but that's not what it looked like, that would make sense. But to say, I saw that van. So is this a trick? Is this part of something bigger that these three authorities are working on? I think it's possible.
Sorry, Isabel. So in the British press over here today, they were going on about the Portuguese police have launched a search of wells throughout that region within the Algarve. Somebody's commenter called Lackluster who said the Portuguese police have come out yesterday to say they have new evidence that has led them to search the wells. What evidence would that be that they might have?
The Portuguese police did not come yesterday. That comes from sexta-feira à noite, an opinion program. Okay. So this is where it all gets confusing. The search of the wells did not happen yesterday. It happened 3 weeks ago. I already have information from journalists talking about the search of the wells as early as June 14th. June 14th. Yeah, sorry, I have notes everywhere. So so you see what I mean? It's like they're selling it. This is all people have to understand too, that there's PR going on in both countries. So when they're saying, well, the Portuguese, no, it was not. The Portuguese police already said that there's information that was given to them by the Germans that they are going to be looking at. They say it. We are going to, at the request of Germany, they have told us some things that are important for us to look at, and we're going to look at them. They are good enough. I mean, they are substantial enough for us to investigate. But as again, in their statement, and I can say it again, within the PJ, it is given what exists up to now is insufficient to deduct any accusation of Christian Brueckner. That's it. I mean, I don't think it can be any more clear than that. So every time that PJ speaks, they put out, you can go to the PJ website and you see what they're saying. Like when there was that appeal, if you go to their site, they said, we are working with you, we're working with UK and Germany, and they've made an appeal. We're not making an appeal at this time. That's it. And then of course, then you have England, you have Operation Grange saying there's no proof that Madeleine is dead. So you have 3 investigations saying completely different things, but all saying that they are sharing the same information. So are they sharing the same information or are they not sharing the same information? So.
Because surely if they had evidence, the Portuguese police on Christian Brueckner, solid evidence, they would give him Arguido status.
Correct. And remember, should I explain that a little bit again?
If you don't mind, for those listening who don't actually understand what the Arguido status is, that'd be really helpful. Thank you.
Okay. So Portugal has, like around the world, it's like a suspect's a suspect. Portugal has a very unique status for an official suspect. Police anywhere in the world can have a suspect. They don't have to tell the public that this person's a suspect. Okay, that's up to them. Okay, but in Portugal, if you want to make somebody an official suspect, and if you're saying, we have enough on you now, we're going to make you an official suspect, you give them the status of arguido. In this particular status, you are given lots of protection, and that is for a lawyer. You have the right to not say anything. Like Kate, she had the right to not say anything. It was not the right thing, because if you're innocent, you give them everything you got. You want to find your kid, but that's a different thing. But with this status, you also are limiting yourself as a police force, because you have to solve the case and you have to bring charges at a limited time, which I believe it's a year for arguido status. You actually have to move on the case. You can't just leave people in limbo. You could not say, okay, you're now an arguido and you're now an arguido for 6-7 years, and we really don't have, but you then under suspicion. That's not correct. What happened was, when Portugal closed the case, they closed the case, and they have to remove, by law, they have to remove that status, because they cannot leave. You cannot close a case, even if temporarily, and leave somebody in limbo. It's not fair, because you're not working on it, but now you're leaving somebody with this official suspect status. So you don't want to do that, and you can't do that in Portuguese law. So the best thing, so when they reopened the case, they chose not to make the McCann suspects. Now, when the McCanns went to court against Amaral, They themselves brought it because they lost. They brought it all the way up to the Supreme Court in appeals. The Supreme Court, but all the way to the Supreme Court, they kept saying that they had been cleared. 3 judges of the Supreme Court did not like the McCanns saying that they had been cleared. And so they had to put out a statement, and they said, you have not been cleared. The McCanns have not been cleared. We have found evidence. We just haven't found sufficient evidence to bring a case against them. Well, hello, that's really big. That's really big. And therefore, the police has the choice of not making them suspects. You don't want to make them suspects if you don't have enough yet. Somebody at Judiciaria, has said, like, we should have never made them arguidos. They're not saying they should have never made them suspects or they shouldn't look at them as suspects. At the time, maybe there was not enough to bring the case. And then they basically shot themselves in the foot. Also, there was a lot of political interference, so that stopped the case from moving forward. But so that's the thing. So the McCanns not being official suspects right now or official arguidos doesn't mean that they are not under suspicion. Okay. And the Portuguese, the moment Portugal says you are a suspect, an official suspect, they're giving that person rights and they limit themselves. So it's perfectly fine for them to continue the way they are. And it seems like they're working on this case, and I like where they're going. So I'm pretty comfortable with what's happening in Portugal. And I might even be comfortable with what's happening in Germany. It all depends on where this goes.
So in your opinion, where do you think this is going, Isabelle?
Oh, I think it's going right to Kate and Jerry McCann. I think it's going right to them. I've always believed that. I mean, it's going to take a little bit more. Is it a trick? Is it, other people have mentioned to me, let's say they find just a little bit of evidence that could put Christian Brueckner in the middle of this. So what happens? You don't just put somebody in jail. He then goes in front of a court. And then the last people to see Madeleine alive, surely they'll have to be interviewed again. Does this bring us back to having to interview the McCanns and the friends again? Is this an opportunity to do just that? To put them all on the stand again? I mean, surely Christian Brueckner has a lot to work with here to defend his client, because after all, the last people to see the child alive and, left him, and these people agree that they left him night after night, and then cadaver dogs alert behind the sofa. And then we have Mr. Smith in Ireland, who just spoke to the media and said that the man who we believe took Madeleine is not Christian Brueckner. That's not the man that he saw. And like they said, he looks 60 to 80% like Jerry McCann. So Mr. Smith, the man at the center of this investigation, according to Operation Grange, is the man that Mr. Smith saw. And Operation Grange has said this. Mr. Smith, the witness that saw this man, is sure that he is sure enough to say it's not Christian Brueckner, but he's 60 to 80% sure that it was Jerry McCann. And the whole family felt that it was most likely Madeleine. And they have said that. And not only that, a friend journalist of mine, Gemma O'Doherty, she interviewed Mr. Smith. Mrs. Smith was there. She kept coming back out and kept coming into the area where the interview was going on. And she kept, saying like, oh, like we really felt it was Madeleine. And she says, I spoke to the person and he didn't respond. And now they felt maybe possibly it was because of the accent with speaking back, reveal that accent that Jerry has. I mean, of course, this is all speculation, but the Smiths themselves were thinking these types of things, but that's it. But they've already said it's not Christian Brueckner. And please remember that Christian Brueckner had long hair at the time. We know this. So Christian Brueckner had hair to his shoulders. So these suspects, that's definitely not the man that the Smiths saw, because the Smiths saw a man with shorter hair. So definitely not the same guy. And and Christian Brueckner was also 10 years younger pretty much than Jerry McCann. So, I mean, at that time makes a big difference, being in your 20s and being in your, 30s. So, yeah.
So I know we're sort of skipping around a bit from here, but again, there's
I'm
as we
sorry,
as we spoke about in the part one that we released a few weeks ago, there is so much to cover, and you touched on Mr. Smith then, who was Martin Smith. So for those who are not listening, he was a guy on the evening of the 3rd around 10 p.m. He saw a man carrying a child, and he was 60 to 80% sure, as you stated, Isabel, that it was Jerry McCann. He also stated, I've got the document in front of me now, that he was carrying a child on their left shoulder, which is the same manner and on the same shoulder that Jerry carries his children. How crucial. So this Mr. Smith has not really been mentioned, this Martin Smith, in many places, really. How crucial and how important did the Portuguese police take his statement?
They take his statements very serious. At first they didn't, because if you remember well, Jane Tanner had implicated Robert Murat. So they were all looking at Robert Murat. But as we know, England and Portugal are working very closely together. And Mr. Smith came back, he did statements. And the interesting thing was, it was that moment when Operation Grange said, this man, this family of 9 people, this is at the center of our investigation. And that has never changed. The Smiths are at the center of this investigation. That's what we know. That's never changed. And so we have Mr. Smith saying, this is not the man he saw. What are we going to do? This is not the man that we saw. And that's it. And Christian Brueckner, again, I have not seen anything that puts him. Oh, and Christian Brueckner, this is the media twists everything. The man that Christian Brueckner talked to, he's quoted by police as saying he knows what happened to Madeleine.
Yeah.
Well, I know what happened to Madeleine. Pretty much. I know she died in 5A. I can tell you that. That doesn't make me a murderer. This Christian Brueckner is obviously some sort of a disturbed guy. He's a criminal. He doesn't doesn't lead a very honest life. Even the rape, there's really nothing other than that hair. But then there's a story that it was a cat that brought in the hair. That's a whole other thing. But even the media keeps saying that Christian is in jail for the rape of this woman. He is not in jail for the rape of this woman. I have yet to see the German police say that. He appealed that. That case is still not been heard. He is in jail for a different crime, a drug crime. It is not for the rape of that 71-year-old woman. So even that, just give us the real news, and the media has twisted everything. They twist every fact. The whales were already being searched 3 weeks ago. This didn't just happen. Christian Brueckner had long hair at the time. The van was not the same. We know this. We can see the 2 different pictures that it's obviously the same van. We could be here all day. He's not in jail for raping the woman. That is a crime that he's being connected to, but that's not why he is in prison.
Well, I think
Jane Tanner, she kept changing the story too. That would have been really amazing if all of a sudden she was like, "Oh, I saw this guy too." She seemed to be seeing everybody. She saw Murat. The woman, she just kept changing her story. Everything, the suspect was changing by the hour.
Well, I think quickly, whilst you mentioned about the press before, I'll throw this over to you, Roberta. How important a part are in your opinion, the press playing in this? Because as I mentioned, in the British press today, they were going on about the wells being searched over in Portugal, which according to Isabel was, done 3 weeks ago. Do you believe the press know more of what's going on and withholding information than we think they have?
No, I don't think they're withholding information. I think that the press are hugely influential on the public opinion. And the point is to change public opinion on this and close the case without ever having to try Brueckner, and just make a myth, and a very pleasant myth. One bad guy did this. That's a much easier to swallow myth than the alternative. And then what's in the PJ files suggests, and it's failing. And so I disagree a little bit. I'm a little less optimistic than Isabelle in thinking that this was planned by Portugal or in conjunction with Germany. I think they're trying to sell the story. It's failing. Once again, it's failing. This was going to be the big finale. Amaral predicted it, I believe, 2 years ago when he said they had this German pedophile suspect they're going to blame it on. And I think it's failing. This is the big last push to close it. And if public opinion weren't so important, why do the McCanns care about people like Brenda Leyland and Isabelle? Why are they calling people on Twitter who are talking about the case factually, bringing things that are in the PJ files to light? Why are they calling them trolls? Because they have power. Because as long as the public doesn't accept these myths, it will keep the case alive and push it to really be solved in what I would consider a fair way. Not whoever has the best PR wins.
Yes. Yeah.
So
hey, you guys mind if I answer a question here from Annalisa Freire?
No problem. Go ahead.
Okay. Annalisa Freire, she's also Portuguese. She's wondering why the PJ never accused the McCanns of child neglect.
Yeah.
And I actually have the explanation for that, because I asked I forget, Inspector Simões about this. In Portugal, the MP, the Ministério Público, when they charge the bigger case, and the smaller case gets dropped. And since neglect was a much smaller case, in conjunction with hiding a body and faking an abduction, they didn't push that, because they would have, let's say they charge them with neglect, but the case was so much bigger than that they would have they thought that they were going to be able to finish the case. So that second smaller charge would have been dropped. And that's what I learned about how our judicial system works. So to Annalisa Freire, I hope that answers your question.
Well, if we go back to the Christian Brueckner at the moment, we strip all this back, which is going on in the press every single day, every media outlet is reporting it. The only, area behind why he might have been involved in this is that allegedly he made a statement in a bar one night, a passing statement that he knows what happened to Madeleine McCann. That's it.
Yeah. Yes, that's it.
That's there's literally nothing else outside of that we are led to believe. It was just one statement he's made one evening in a bar.
Yes, that's it.
So why is that snowballed so much? And that almost brings me on to
I believe
Roberta's point.
They say that he had videos that were incriminating, but I hear this from the media. I haven't particularly heard the prosecutor saying that these videos, what they contained exactly. See, everything, I always search, where is it coming from? Is it a statement from the prosecutor, or is it coming from the media? All I heard the prosecutor say is that they have they believe that he is involved in her murder, but they don't have enough proof. But then they have never really told us what this proof is. So it's kind of odd, because I've actually not yet seen the German police tell us exactly. It was so funny, because the show in Australia, they're like, oh, is there video of Madeleine on his property?
Yeah.
Are you joking? If Christian Brueckner had a video of Madeleine, do you think we'd all be here? And that wouldn't be sufficient? I mean, the kid is missing, at least kidnapping. they would have a, I mean, it's like and to think that these journalists think that this is even a question that is possible. Really? You're a journalist and you think that there is a video of Madeleine after she disappeared, and that would not be sufficient to bring a case against Christian Brueckner? I mean, come on. I mean, it's almost, I feel sometimes I get frustrated because I feel like people aren't thinking, they're not engaging their brain. That would literally be, that would be more than enough, right?
And so was Christian Brueckner or somebody mentioned, and was it in Gonçalo Amaral's book, which I had on the slide then, regarding a suspect who was in prison in Germany?
Yes, and see this is where it gets confusing, because there were two prisoners, there were two guys in Germany, and this is why Amaral came back next year, and he said the prisoner in German that people think he's talking about, that's not him. This is a new guy. So Amaral, his sources, people think that he has nothing to do with the PJ. Amaral has everything to do with PJ. Once you are a cop, you're a cop. You have friends. You have, I'm sure he knows even a lot more than he's saying. But so I think that there's a little bit that we don't know there that I'm sure Amaral knows a little bit more than we do, as to this German suspect and how we found out about it.
Yeah.
Also somebody told me, like I see Sandra Felgueiras, she fell out with Amaral. Amaral already said, I never told her anything like that. So now she's on this, vengeance thing. But a lot of the things that are coming up, Amaral he's always right. The things that he says always seem to come true and always seem to, to come back to the forefront, and, and he's vindicated. Also, if people remember, Pedro do Carmo, the previous deputy director, was asked if the previous team of the PJ, Amaral's team, was wrong. He never once said that Amaral was wrong. He said, until this case is over, I cannot make that judgment. How important is that? Until this case is over, I cannot judge Amaral if he was right or wrong, if his team was right or wrong. So for anybody like an opinion journalist to say that that he was wrong, the PJ themselves are not saying that, and I've never said that. Okay, we know Luís Neves, the current head of the PJ, testified in court against the McCanns on behalf of Gonçalo Amaral. These are the little things that people don't know, and people should get informed. Stop listening to the media. Read the files.
Yeah.
Listen to what the McCanns are telling you, because they incriminate themselves all the time. Read Kate's book as a mother and see how true that rings to you, or a father, somebody who's had children. This is just a big PR campaign, and half of the stuff we're being fed is just baloney.
Well, you touched on a bit there, and I'll throw this question over to Roberta regarding Jerry and Kate's numerous interviews that they've done on television. For, again, in my opinion, for being a father myself, as somebody who's lost their child, there seems to be very little grief there and little emotion. I don't know what your feelings are, Roberta.
Right. It's well, first of all, remember what Kate said very early. She said most people are inherently good people, and we're asking whoever knows anything to come forward. Well, we're asking the same thing. Kate and the Tabas friends to come forward, do the reenactment, answer the 48 questions. If you're asking, the public, then you should be don't be hypocrites. Engage and participate with the police in helping to find your daughter. Mm-hmm. So does that answer your question? What was your original question?
Regarding that, how in your eyes they've come across in the numerous media.
How they've come across?
Yeah.
Yeah. That, I mean, it's a spectrum, and they're way off the spectrum of parents that you've seen who've had missing children, where the suspect has either been found and convicted or the case has been solved. Way off the spectrum. And their language is very strange, but that's not enough. I mean, you just look at the totality of the evidence of what's in the PJ files. If they just had the interviews, that's very, they're very interesting. End of story. But what cements it in my mind as their interviews being important and what they say being important is because it matches up so much with their changing stories in the PJ files. So so I love Peter Hyatt's analysis, but when he says that statement analysis is 100%, I'm a little like, I don't know what is 100% in life, So it's I say look at everything, but they're counting on people not to do the hard work of reading the PJ files. They're counting on people to take the shortcuts, to watch the biased documentary, and this is not, and again, I sound like a broken record, but it's not just this case. It's so many true crime cases. Our true crime case reporting is so poor. And, sometimes they'll just write up exactly what the defense tells them, and that's easy. They don't have to read the files. They don't have to read the court records. They just repeat back. They don't have to go to court. It's just don't take the shortcuts. Do the hard work and it will pay off.
Let's go on to the 48 questions that you briefly touched on before, Roberta. For those people that are listening that don't know this, Jerry McCann, he answered 48 questions and Kate refused to answer them to the police. I've got the questions in front of me now, and I'll just give you a few. I'll just read off. For example, how long did you search the apartment take after you detected Madeleine's absence? Why did you say Madeleine had been abducted? What happened after you raised the alarm? These are not complicated questions. And again, in my opinion, being a father, these questions are questions that would help and assist the police. They are basic. You're not putting yourself in a position where you could get yourself maybe into trouble. It's trying to provide more information to the police. So Isabelle, why did Kate say no? I refuse to answer those questions.
Well, I believe because Jerry had already answered questions, and whatever she would answer would very largely differ from his. And that was basically it. She could not match in a situation like this. She could not exactly match because this was all planned. And so the real story will never come forward because the real story won't match. When you have, and I've spoken to so many people from FBI to Scotland Yard, and they all say that it's impossible for everything to match. People view things differently, but things like the door that you came in, what were you doing that night, those are things. When you're asked that day if you took a bath or a shower, if you took a bath or a shower. It's just happened the day before, you know what I mean? And especially it's so vivid. What did you see in the room when you came in? Okay, she did not want to say it because she's afraid that they had found something. Because if you're innocent, you can pretty much, you're like, I saw this. When I walked in, I saw this. I saw my daughter. I saw that my daughter was gone. I looked here and I looked there. She did not want to put that on record because she'd already given statements, and she knew that her two other statements already didn't match, and her husband, so I'm sure that they're like, you keep talking and you just keep saying different things. And, like the doll, for example, the cuddle cat. That's a big example, though the cat was up high on a shelf where she couldn't reach, but the police pictures showed the cat right next to her pillow. So what does she mean? Either she's lying about the cuddle cat being up high on a shelf, or she disturbed the evidence and put the cat there. So which one is it? You cannot have both. Either the cat was on a shelf or the cat was on the bed, or the cat was on the shelf and you took it down and you put it on the bed. But why would you do that for police if you're trying to, if you don't want to disturb? Also, these are doctors. Let's remember, they let in a multitude of people. And Kate McCann said in her book that she was very upset that they said that they were the ones that disturbed the crime scene. They did. If a thief came into your house and took your jewels and took your Rolex and your Cartier, would you be going around touching everything? You made sure that you touched nothing. So when police come, they can check for fingerprints. And that's just materialistic stuff. This is a child we're talking about. There's a lot of things. There, Mrs. Fan, there's, I want you to remember this. Kate McCann, they didn't call the police for 41 minutes. Okay, they had plenty of opportunities. The first opportunity, what are we taught in the United States? Different in the UK, but call 911, call 911. Somebody's sick, something is missing, call 911. It's the first thing that you do. Kate McCann, according to their statements, came to the tapas bar to tell everybody Madeleine is missing. Wouldn't the first thing be to the first person in the restaurant she encountered, a waiter, a bartender, a cook, anybody working in that restaurant who was Portuguese? Wouldn't the first thing would be to say, call the police? Kate McCann leaves the children behind. She thinks there's an abductor, leaves her children behind already, now gets to the tapas bar, and she doesn't ask anyone there to call the police, when we all know that's exactly the first thing that we're told to do, right? I'm sure in the United States, that's what we're told to do, call 911, So in Portugal, it was the same thing. You call the police. That's the first thing you do. You don't wait. Then when they had various chances, I've had chances where we had a neighbor's house who caught on fire. They had hundreds of calls. I called, every single neighbor called, because the house was catching fire. Nobody wondered if somebody had already called. Mrs. Finn upstairs asked Jerry McCann if she would like him. I think she was surprised because no police had showed up yet. And she says, would you like me to call? And they're like, no, they've already been called. Isn't the more the merrier? Their child is missing. Oh, no, don't bother. No, don't bother. This woman lives there. You never know. Like, does this woman have a direct, detective that she knows? You never know. So somebody asks you, do you want me to call the police? Oh, no, they've already been called. And only 41 minutes later is anyone called. And they can't lie, because the logs for the police are the logs for the police. We know the first call, and also it was never the McCanns who called or their friends. It was actually an employee of the resort. So
are we at the end, or do I have a minute, or are we at the end of our time?
No, go ahead, Roberta, go ahead.
So just to support what Isabel says, maybe you don't call the police if you think maybe she just wandered off or you're just looking for her. But Kate said right away, they've taken her. And she told Yvonne Martin, a couple took Madeleine. So they seem to have a very clear idea right away what happened, that she was taken, not that she wandered off. So it makes it much more serious that they didn't call the police. At first, if you think, oh, maybe she just opened the gate or she's walking around the resort, ask everybody, that seems more normal to me, to not call 911 or call the police, or, oh, we don't want to make a fuss right away. Let's just look around a little bit before we, look foolish when we find her and the police are here. Maybe 5 minutes, but it's quite strange that they thought that this was an abduction right away, and they didn't call anyone. They didn't want to call anyone.
And Roberta, that's such a good point. And again, for those listening, we're not using the McCanns as scapegoats here, but there are so many hundreds of unanswered questions out there which do make you scratch your head. And actually, Roberta, what you mentioned then about ringing the emergency services, etc. What were your thoughts on Kate McCann, her first words when she came running down to the tapas bar saying they've taken her? That makes no sense, does it, Roberta? In my eyes, it doesn't make any sense. I don't know what your opinion that is.
No, it sounds like they had a story planned from somewhere. To me, this is my opinion.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know though, because you know,
I agree.
Why would you say that though?
Speculate, because they won't cooperate, you know, fully cooperate. So we can only speculate, you know, but it sounds like it's a story that they had planned.
Yeah, exactly. And another one I want to actually throw to you, Isabel, was Kate and Jerry McCann. They deleted all their phone history from before that date in May. They kept all the phone history prior to them going on holiday to Praia da Luz, but they deleted it all that had happened that week, text messages and phone calls. I'm, you know, myself personally, I don't delete my call history. I don't delete my text messages. It makes me scratch my head. Who does that? Yeah.
Yes. And what was specific how they got caught too was because there was a call that one of them deleted. I always, you know, so much information in my head, but there was a call that one of them deleted and the other one didn't. So that's how the police saw that immediately, because it was almost like Jerry had the one to Kate and Kate did not have the one to Jerry. And so that automatically alerted the police to look at that, because obviously that was like, why does she have it? He doesn't have it. So yes, they were busy. This is when they were asked in that interview, first of all, she begins to lie, because the interviewer asked her, you know, like, why didn't you search? It's like, well, we were just so busy to not, I mean, Kate never even lifted her butt out of that house. She just, you know, like, according to not Yvonne, but God, I forget her name, the manager at the Ocean Club, like she said, she just basically Sylvia Batista, sorry. She said, well, she just sat there on the bed and everybody was just calling the media and calling home and talking, and nobody was searching. I mean, here you have somebody that has nothing to do with this case, is not biased. She works at the resort, and she's automatically seeing something so odd that didn't make any sense to her. You know, that's it. You know, just, you know, going back to their actions, you know, not going along, their actions, not calling the police, not searching. Those are actions of somebody that's really not looking for anybody. You know, here we have that Peterson guy whose wife and baby, you know, she was pregnant, she was killed. And people started to notice that he was there doing all the publicity stunts, but he never searched. People were out searching, but he never went and searched. And people are like, well, that's weird. It's like, because why bother? I mean, you end up feeling like this. I've always just, I mean, I don't know if it's anger, but I feel that people allow the McCanns to badmouth Amaral. Amaral was the one searching for their daughter. And even if they didn't like it, they he seems like a very reasonable person. Kate never came to the police. She could have been, I would have known what to do. You come to the public and say, I know we may look guilty. I know that maybe things don't look right, but I promise you, it is not me. I loved my daughter. My daughter was great because of this. My daughter is great because of that. My life is nothing without her. I mean, there's just so many. She has never really appealed to Madeleine. It's always like me, and what I'm thinking and what people are doing to me. And again, great point, you know, that we need peace. Now we need peace. What do you mean? We're discussing that your daughter now could have been trafficked, killed by a pedophile, but you need peace. It's like, what about your daughter's peace? It's just, everything is a little bit off kilter. So
thank you, Isabel. One question which is coming from Doddridge. So Doddridge 12, we've got to touch on it, which is about the cadaver dogs, because this just does not seem to go away at all on Keela and Eddie, the two dogs. First question, actually, I want to put to you: could they be wrong?
The dogs be wrong?
Yeah.
No. I have spoken to the best, and they've explained this is what it's been explained to me. The more alerts, the more unlikely. You have to understand that behind the sofa, the dogs corroborated each other. Okay. One dog alerted to blood. The other dog, no, the dogs didn't go in together. They were taken in separately. And they both went right to the same place and alerted the same place in the same house, behind a sofa. Behind a sofa. It wasn't like, oh, it's right here in the kitchen, where somebody, dropped them. No, behind the sofa. Those dogs corroborated each other. And then, of course, there was material there that was collected. And then it was found not to be able to give a final result. But basically, Madeleine's markers were in that sample. Okay, Madeleine's markers were in that sample. So the dogs cannot be ignored. And then the fact that there were so many alerts in the garage, they alerted to one car. There were 10 cars there. Many people don't realize that the dogs weren't just taken to the McCann's apartment. They were taken all around the resort to many other apartments. The only place those dogs alerted were to the McCann's apartments. So we cannot forget that. They were taken around the resort. It's not just they were taken there and they alerted. They alerted only to the McCann's belongings, to Kate McCann's pants. The dog alerted to Kate McCann's pants, to which the family immediately came to defend Kate once they knew that Kate had, as a GP, had been visiting dead bodies. Well, she visited 10 dead bodies in the same pants. And then you bring your cadaver odor pants without, on vacation, where you go visit people and those. I mean, it's just, she was a GP. How many dead people did she see? These are all little things that her family, that you would have the family speak for them. People say, well, Kate never said that. I said, so what are you saying? Who's the liar? Is Jerry's sister the liar? Did she come up with that all on her own? I doubt she would do that to her brother, to come up with a lie. So
it's absolutely baffling, because again, with the cadaver dogs, what doesn't go away is the hire car, the Renault Scenic, which they hired 24 days after Maddie went missing, and they picked up, well, there was DNA samples as well, I believe, found in the boot of the car. Why was that not took any further by the authorities, Isabelle?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I had a little noise here.
Yeah, so obviously the cadaver dogs picked up the Renault Scenic car, which the McCanns hired 24 days afterwards, amongst lots of other cars. If anybody's seen the video, I think it was on the Netflix documentary. It was the Renault that they were attracted to, that were their scent, and DNA was found in the boot of the car, and I believe on the car key itself and on the car fob. Why do the authorities not take this any further?
Okay, at the time, of course, all these items were sent for examination. At the time, it was found that the items in the car, there were hairs without root. At the time, there was no way to test them, and so they could not come up with anything from that. Then the DNA sample that they obtained was of 3 people. Of the 3 people, Madeleine's components were also in that particular sample, some of Madeleine's components, but it was of 3 people. And at that time, there was not a way to differentiate, so it was inconclusive. So the interesting thing is that Madeleine has never really been excluded from anything. Not in the boot of the car, she cannot be excluded. She is included, but it's just, you cannot, it could not forensically tell at that time that was Madeleine exactly. And that's the problem. That was the problem. But it was, and now, of course, Dr. Perlin, an American geneticist, believes that he has the code that could separate these pieces of DNA and extract each DNA profile. Okay. So has the police already tried with open source code technique. And that's the thing, with Dr. Perlin, one thing that I learned, because people are like, why aren't they accepting Dr. Perlin's
That's right, because he's reached
help?
out a few times, hasn't he? Dr. Perlin has,
Correct.
I believe.
And he would like to do it. But the problem is, does it add more problems for the prosecution? And the reason why I say this is because Dr. Perlin is not open source software. So although Dr. Perlin has helped to solve so many cases, and he's undoubtedly brilliant, but it has sometimes not been able to be admissible in court, and especially in Europe, where they are still, changing a lot of the laws to be able to bring in some of this new technology, because the judge is not able to find out how you obtained the code. It makes it a little bit more difficult for the police to use, because they might not be able to use it. It might not be admissible in court. So what does that do? Does that complicate things more? So, I mean, I think there's a little bit to it. So I don't really fault Operation Grange or Judiciária for not have accepted that, because maybe they do have. Once I started to look into it, I realized maybe there are some reasons why, but I would love to hear Dr. Perlin's opinion. I definitely respect them. Many cases have been solved with his work.
Well, let's get him on the show. That'd be really interesting, wouldn't it? Well, actually,
I know. That would be fantastic.
Well, actually, we'll just finish off on the DNA now. And actually, a straightforward question is, DNA was found of that matched Madeleine McCann in the apartment and also in the car, which is a yes, which we know, and that's a fact. With Christian Brueckner and within his motorhome, which they've searched, they've DNA'd. Has any DNA been found in there?
No.
Again, that leaves more questions.
Again, if there was videos of Madeleine, if there's DNA, where they would have enough, that would be enough. But so far, I mean, we don't know what the Germans have and what the Portuguese have, but certainly Portuguese, up to just a couple days ago, I understand, we're saying no, that what they have is not enough. Not only not enough to accuse them, they are saying it's not enough to exclude the other lines of investigation and the other suspects that they are working on. And they told me this personally too, not as detailed as they told Felicia Cabrita from her, not as detailed as hers, but they did tell me that they are helping the Germans, but that they have their own lines of investigation that they are following. And that's how they.
No, thank you, Isabel. And over to you, Roberta. Sandra Falgueras. So you wanted to touch on her. So for those people that don't know, could you just tell us a bit of her background and the latest statement she released, I believe, on her Facebook a few days ago?
She's a Portuguese journalist, and she was one of the journalists who gave the McCanns a really tough interview with that. I think people who are familiar with the case will remember her when Jerry said to her, you know, why don't you ask the dogs? That's Sandra. Well, she came out with a statement on Facebook saying, really bashing Amaral, which I would call, you know, and appealing to authority, saying, you know, I know this case. I've talked to the McCanns, and the Amaral was terrible. He did. I mean, you know, I'm summarizing the feeling of, you know, this. You can. I'll put it up in my on my Facebook page and make it public for those who are interested in it. And saying that Amaral was terrible. He had all this evidence that he could never use. He could never try the McCanns because he never had enough evidence. And I've been searching. I'm really following the Brueckner line, and you know, this case, I care about Madeleine. So basically, what it was about was shaming anyone who had any doubts about the McCanns. And it's surprising because, you know, she gave such a tough interview to the McCanns originally. So it's basically you know, another thing to sort of gaslight the public. If you're a terrible person, you don't know. I know. I'm an authority. I know that Amaral has no credibility. I know that the PJ files are just nothing,
Yeah.
nothing, you know?
Yeah.
So, and when you asked Isabel, could the dogs be wrong? Yes, it's a very small possibility that they could be wrong, but yes,
Yeah.
could any piece of evidence be wrong? Yes, but we're looking at the totality of evidence and
Yeah.
the you know the quality of evidence. What's
Yeah.
the quality of the evidence against Brueckner? That we know. Maybe it's better than we know, but come forward. And I think that it's right to challenge yourself, and it's
Yeah.
right to say, to always say, I could be wrong. I always could be wrong, you know. And the more information I make an opinion, form an opinion after looking at all the evidence that I have. But could very strong evidence come about? Yes. Is it likely? Probably not. But there we go.
Yeah.
So yes, any one thing could be wrong, but there's
Yeah.
so many things that all point to the same theory.
Yeah.
That she died in 5A, and that there was the cover up, and the why is always such the interesting question.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Because it's very, very rare that people cover up an accident.
Yeah. They had all the reason. Their lives were on the line. They had every reason to cover up an accident. If something had happened under Madeleine under suspicious circumstances, let it be a beating, had it been the drugs, their lives as doctors would be over, would be, my God, their lives were on the line, and nothing was going to bring Madeleine back. And all they had now is 2 other children to look after. You can almost understand. So when people say there's no motive, of course there's a motive. And, even somebody told me today, the McCanns, they had a plan, and I believe that their plan changed it a little bit later, because then the money started coming in, and that became another incentive. All of a sudden you have £4.5 million being given to you. My God, that's a lot of money. And you're a celebrity. You're giving these interviews, you're being invited to soccer games and polo matches. And I mean, it was, rubbing elbows with the very rich. I mean, the McCanns had a lot to gain, and they seem to really enjoy the limelight. And Kate, numerous photo shoots with, lovely dresses and, posing sad, posing with Cuddle Cat. How many times did she actually sit down to pose with Cuddle Cat?
And that was the Cuddle Cat that did.
Yeah.
Apologies about that. That was a Cuddle Cat that DNA was found on as well, wasn't it?
Yes, correct. The dogs alerted to the Cuddle Cat, correct. And again, the Cuddle Cat, I mean, there are just so many. That's the thing about this case. You start talking about it, and then everything just, keeps coming back to you, that there were so many things. But what I want to leave people with is the whales. What we're talking about right now, Christian Brueckner, even this is not correct. I can show you, and I can post articles that already mentioned the whales 3 weeks ago. So it's not something that just happened. And the police has already said that nothing was found. Nothing was found so far. And these are quoted from Judiciary, that nothing has been found. So it's possible that something else would change. But I think the police is pretty aware. I don't think right now anything at the moment is going to come out that is going to change this. I really don't think so. I think that this case is probably going to go forward. I think the Germans are probably going to continue with this until they say there's nothing else that we can find. The Portuguese have already said if the Portuguese had said, okay, well, it's not Christian Brueckner, we're done. They're literally saying we have other leads. So this shows no sign of stopping. This is what I'm saying. The Portuguese are the primary investigation here. What they decide to do, and it was said before, even if Germans are going to close the case, we're not going to close this case. We're going to keep going. Will they solve it? I really have a feeling that it will eventually be solved. Even Gonzalo Amaral has said it will be solved. Also, Gonzalo Amaral said, "Oh, I think it's interesting now that the Germans." Even Gonzalo Amaral said, "Well, yeah, I wonder, what can come out of this thing with the Germans getting involved. Why are they getting involved? Can they solve it? So let's see, or help solve it."
No, Isabel, wonderfully put. There is so much more we could have gone through. I'm sure we'll have a part 3 again, probably in a few months' time, when more news comes through. So, fantastic, ladies. Thank you both for your time. If nobody follows you, Isabel, on your Twitter, then everybody head over to McCann Case Tweet, and also for Roberta, your podcast, go give you a follow on Twitter at Roberta Glass Pod. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
And thank you so much. And you two have a good week. And I'm sure we'll talk again soon. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. Bye. Bye.